Hi, my name is Roy Canterbury, and I'm going to be your host today on Archery Talk 101. And we have Jesse on the show with us today, and we're going to find out a little bit about his world in archery and what it entails. Welcome to the show, Jesse.
Thank you, Roy. Appreciate it.
So tell us a little something about you, so our audience can get to know you a little bit better.
Well, me and Amy have two children, a daughter that will be 30 in January, Sydney, and a son, Owen, that's 26. And we have a granddaughter who turned 9 months Sunday. And that's probably the biggest joy that anybody that doesn't have them can't understand until you have
Right.
them. So, yes. And I'm a project manager for civil construction and also own a masonry business. So stay pretty busy. And anytime I can hunt, I'm in the woods hunting. So
So what's the name of your business that you own?
H&L Foundations
Okay.
is, and we do mostly block, brick, rock, concrete work, retaining walls, anything masonry wise, we cover.
Okay. And where are you located, just in case our listeners need that service?
We're in South Central Virginia,
Okay.
just below Lynchburg. Yes, sir.
Okay. So anybody that's around there, now you know somebody that does concrete work.
Yes, sir.
A little too far away from me. I'm in Nebraska, but you're probably not going to come to Nebraska to do concrete work.
It would have to be pretty lucrative.
Yeah, and include a big hunt.
Yes, sir. Now we can talk about that. Yeah.
So how did you get started in archery?
Um, Probably the way most people did. I When I grew up, my parents worked at night, so I stayed with my grandfather a lot, and he was the biggest outdoorsman that I've ever known. I mean, hunting, fishing, trapping, raising animals, hunting ginseng. If it was outside, he did it, and so I would watch him come in from hunting in the afternoons, and I just decided, hey, when I get old enough, that's what I want to do. So I first started bow hunting with one of his recurves, and that's how I got started.
Yeah, it's I hear a lot of stories, similar to that, and mine's not quite so exciting, but when a kid, I got a bow. I don't know why or how I got a bow, but I had a bow and I put together a bunch of cardboard boxes and shot at them, you know,
Yes, sir.
and it
Uh,
just kind of started from there.
I I ended up took an old mattress off a bed and took it down behind the house and hung it up between two trees, and that's what I shot at. And
Oh,
so anything we could get a hold of to shoot at, that's what we did.
at least it was an old mattress, not a new one.
Yes, sir.
So about how long ago was that you started doing that, when you was pretty young, or
10, 11, 12
10,
years old.
11?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
That's kind of, I think, when a lot of us start. Some start earlier and some start
Yeah,
later, and it just kind of sticks with you, and
it does.
you go there. And now you started off with a recurve. You still shoot a recurve, or you shooting compounds now?
I went full circle. Yeah, I'm back to recurve. Probably 90% of my hunting has recurve, and I will pull out a compound and hunt a little bit with it here and there. But yeah, I just I gun hunted some until I was around late 20s, and I put that up and just started bow hunting, and then I started for recurve, and then went to a compound, and then probably 3 years ago I went back to a recurve, and this past year almost exclusively back. Yeah,
Kind of back to a little more challenge of the recurve, and
yeah, that's what I tell myself anyway. Yeah.
so do you have I'm sure you have some really cool stories of some of your hunts. I'd like to hear about some of them.
Yeah, I tell you, probably one of the most memorable hunts I ever had. I've got a buddy, Kevin Motley. We hunt out west a lot, and we were in Montana mule deer hunting, and the guide put me in a blind one morning over a water hole, and he told me, he said, "Look, you're gonna sit there all day," and he said, "Nobody's hunted this hole in this tank. They call them tanks. in 4 or 5 years. So he takes me out and puts me in a blind like 5 in the morning. And as it's getting daylight, I look up on a big ridge there, and there's three nice mule deer bucks going up on that ridge, and they go up probably 400 or 500 yards in front of me in bed up on this rock ledge. And I sit there from 7 in the morning to 3 in the afternoon watching these bucks lay under these rock cliffs and get up and feed and lay back down. And so finally, about three, I decided they're not coming to this water. I mean, so I snuck out the blind, went around the back, and took about a 2 mile hike around to the back of that big ridge and came up over the backside of it. And when I came up over the back, I got in a draw and looked up where the three bucks were, and there was only one left. The nicest one was still there. And the wind was blowing about 30 miles an hour. And he got up and started towards me and then turned around and went right back up to the top and over the top. And I said, well, he's gone. I said, I'll never see him again. So I got up and went back up to the top, and the top of this small mountain or ridge, whatever you want to call it, was only about 20 yards wide, and then it went right back off the backside. So I walked over to the backside and looked, and he was standing 30 yards feeding on the backside of this cliff. And I ended up shooting him. He rolled all the way down to the bottom, and that's one of the most memorable hunts I've had. Was I still think about it today, and that's probably 9, 10 years ago. This past year, I was fortunate to kill a 5x5 in Montana elk with my recurve, and that was I guess a highlight of my hunting. But we grew up doing a lot of bird hunting out Texas and Oklahoma. We would go out quail hunting and grouse hunting up in Canada and Maine. We still grouse hunt in Maine a whole lot. So we like it all. If it's killing and shooting, we like doing it. So
Yeah, you're not the only one. I grew up, shooting the bow a little bit, but mostly doing a lot of pheasant hunting.
yes, sir.
With my cousin and walking fields and walking fields and you get out there and now as I get older, it's like I am not walking fields for three birds when I can sit and wait for a big deer to come by.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
So yeah, I haven't pheasant hunted in quite a while. Last time we had a dog that was pretty good at pheasant getting pheasants, and when he started getting older, then I knew something was up when I had to go kick his doghouse when it was time to go, because normally, if you open the gate during the day, he wouldn't leave the backyard. At night, you couldn't keep him in the back there because it's time to go hunt.
Yes, sir.
And he didn't run around the house except when I opened the gate to go hunting. And this one morning, I went to take him out and opened the gate up, and he didn't hear it. And I went up and kicked on his doghouse, and he got up and went hunting. And I found out what happened is he couldn't hear anymore. So he
Uh,
couldn't hear me hollering at him or anything. So I said, okay, that's the last he can hunt because, if he can't hear me, you don't know what's going on. But he never really hunted very far away. He was always real close hunting dog.
yeah.
Um, I did take one time and encourage him on. He got probably about 100 yards in front of me. And of course, there was other hunters there. So if he kicked up something, they could get a shot. And I just stood there and looked at him. He's looking back at me, finally decides, well, I don't know what to do. So he come running back.
we were we were in Oklahoma one year quail hunting, and it was one of our guides was a professional fireman, and he quail hunted every day. He was not at the fire department. His name was Frank, and he had a lemon and white pointer. He told us that morning, he said, I'm going to sell this pointer if anybody's looking for one. Well, that morning she had pointed me about 4 coveys, and my brother-in-law was with me, and I said, Chuck, if she points me one more covey, I'm going to take that dog back to Virginia. Well, it wasn't but a few minutes. She locked up on another covey, and I walked up there, and up they come, and so I brought her on back from Oklahoma to Virginia. But no, it's I've hunted with a lot of dogs that I thought couldn't hear me. They could, but they act like they couldn't.
Yeah, I've seen a few of those that they just ignore you.
Yeah.
And I know one guy I used to work with. He had a shot collar for his dog, And when you get the shot collar out, the dog wanted it because he knew it was getting ready to go hunt. Had the collar with the beeper on it and everything
Yes, sir.
else on it, and he knew that that collar meant it was going to go hunt, so he wanted it on. A lot of dogs don't like those collars on, but this one did because it knew it was time to go hunt, and that's kind of nice when you have a dog that you know likes to go out and do that kind of stuff. And I've talked to a few people that they use dogs for trailing deer. When you get a deer down and
Hmm.
you don't find it, dog can find that deer, so easy.
Yes.
And when they're trained to look for them, that's a big business. One of the as I was talking to on here, he says, yeah, there's a big business. Guys that have the dogs that track the deer when you can't find when you call them up and they come out and they find your deer, and it's well worth paying them something to come out and do that. And uh,
Sure. Yes. Yeah.
because you hate losing the meat. You don't want to give it to the coyotes and bugs.
No, no,
You're
it's too
good for
much trouble
that.
to get it. Yes, sir. Uh, I'll tell you a funny story about a shot collar. We was in Texas one year. We had a guy named Joe. Joe was about 6'6", and he could walk your legs off. I mean, he could really roll. And he had these big, long, tall pointers, and one of them was named Jack. And all morning, Jack was hunting like 500-600 yards out from us, and he would call Jack, and Jack had a shot collar on, and he would shock him, and Jack would act like he just wasn't paying any attention to us. So we got in at lunch, and Joe said, "This morning we hunted with Jack." He said, "This afternoon Jack's gonna hunt with us." So when he got him out to box after lunch, he took the shot collar off of his neck and strapped it around his back end.
Oh,
And the first time Jack got out a couple hundred yards, he started calling Jack, Jack, and Jack wouldn't turn, and so he hit that shot collar, and Jack done a flip and come right back to us. And he stayed in with us all afternoon. Wouldn't go back out.
yeah, they kind of get used to it and they can get kind of stubborn and yeah, ignore it because it's not
Yeah,
that painful. It's
yeah,
more of a noise and discomfort. But yeah, around the hip, yeah,
yeah,
that would be a little bit more discomfort.
yeah,
Yeah, I guess I never thought of that. I know when I was working at um, Bass Pro, one of the guys there that was working there, he thought it'd be kind of see what it was like. He put a shot collar himself and set on low setting and made noise, and he found out, oh yeah, yeah, human necks aren't designed to take those shots, even on a low setting.
yeah. I wouldn't want any part of that.
Yeah, yeah, it's like he did it once, wasn't gonna do it again. We just laughed at it. It was like he told us like that's that was just too funny.
It is.
He did it to himself, not like somebody put it on him and then shocked him. It's like he did it himself.
Mm,
Yeah, it's kind of interesting what some of the dogs can do. The dog we had never thought he'd really like water because, my wife at the time she hosed him down. He didn't really like that so well. So I was out one time and going along, and also he just goes right to the water. It's like he didn't care. He wasn't being hosed down. He didn't care about going in the water.
yeah. Mm.
There's a little difference when they're being hosed down as when they decide to go. And yeah, he was quite an interesting dog. Some of them are really cool, and you got some neat stories with them. And I know one time here in Nebraska they had stocked some of the public lands. They put some pheasants out, and they're not as spooky as others. So they'll sit and was going by, and all of a sudden he sticks his nose down in this grass. I go walking up, nothing comes up. I says, "Come on, let's go." So he comes up and he goes right back there again, and nothing comes up. So I get him away. He comes back, and this time it's kind of like said, "I'm going to prove there's something." Reaches underneath the grass and pulls out a pheasant. It was sitting so tight, it was not moving. And he says, "If you're not going to go get it, I'm going to go get it." And he went down there and he just snatched it from underneath the grass.
Mm. Yeah, it's fun hunting behind a good dog. It really is. Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely a little different. And then then when you get sitting in your tree stand, you're all by yourself, and there's nobody to help you find anything. And um, it kind of hones your skills on trailing when you get something, you got to try and blood trail it. And some blood trails are a 5-year-old could follow it, and
Mhm.
others, it's like you're looking for little bitty little drops, 50 yards apart, before you find the next one. And it's like, yeah, those aren't the fun ones to track.
No, they're not. Very nerve wracking.
You get that low exit, and you don't get much blood for quite a while, and then you go along. And I know one time um I shot this deer, and I looked at my arrow. Arrow wasn't really hardly bloody at all. A little bit of fat on it. I didn't see any, and I walked probably about 10, 15 yards the rest of the way up the top of the hill, and the blood trail was still there a month later.
Wow.
It just went through. I don't know what it hit, but it just all of a sudden it just opened up. It took, probably 10, 15 yards for it to open up, and it just opened up. And then it's just, I heard it crash, so I knew it didn't go very far. So I'm just following this blood trail, and I'm just walking and following it and going. And that was fairly early in the season, and probably about a month later, you could still see the grass being stained.
Oh,
It's like, yeah, that was a good trail.
yeah, those are one of the fun. You know, it's something at the end of the trail.
Yeah, yeah, it's on that because I heard it crash, so I could have just walked right straight to it, but
Yeah,
the
that
blood
takes
trail,
all the fun out.
yeah.
Yeah.
I I had one time I was sitting in this tree, and this little bitty uh 4 point buck was standing up there, just little bitty short tines. It was just, I think it was the first year of his antlers. It wasn't spiked, but he had, nice little four on each side, and nice little 8 pointer. And he just looked really skinny. I'm looking at him trying to figure out, okay, he's not sick or nothing. He's just a little deer right now. And next thing you know, my hunting partner comes up. He was ready to go and chased him off. So I got to give him crap for a long time about him chasing off my 8 point buck. I wasn't gonna shoot it anyway, but still.
Yeah, you could give him some grief about it anyway.
Yeah, I get to
Yeah.
give him some grief on that one. So I'm sure you got other stories. Tell us about your elk that you got.
Um, yeah, this year I tell you, I was sitting over a tank again. We got a place out west that's really good. We go every year, and we've had really really good success. And so when I got out there, the guys we hunt with are really like family. We've hunted with them for a while, and we consider them family. They consider us family. And so I think it was his second evening. He put me on this tank, and I was in a tree blind. They take cedars and they drive up these metal T posts and surround them by cedars, and you're just sitting in a little hole here. And probably about an hour before dark, I looked over to my right, and here comes a whole herd of elk. I'm talking about 200 head, but they're all cows and spikes. And they come and they surround this tank, and this tank's probably 30-foot diameter. They surround it. It's elk in it. It's elk like 3 layers deep, elk around this tank, 25 yards in front of me. And so I'm watching them, and I told my buddies, I said, look, if I get a chance at a 4x4 or bigger with my recurve, I'm going to shoot it. I don't care. I've never killed one for recurve, and so that's what I'm going to do. And so they all sit there and drink the water for probably 30 minutes and went off. And so I'm kept looking back to my right, and I look, and here comes 3 or 4 cows and this 5x5 and another spike. And they come up to the tank, and they finally come around, and the 5x5 gives me a shot. He's angled pretty steep, and I hit him a little back, but he runs over about 100 yards or so and just stands there and won't move. And my Aaron broadhead is still in him about 3/4 of the way, and he just stands there, and he'll take one step and stand there for 10 minutes, and finally about 30 minutes of that, he starts walking up fence line, and he goes about 30 yards and lays down. And I said, well, he's not going to get up. I said, he's laid right there. That broadhead's inside of him, and he's hurting really bad. And um, it's getting dark, and I'm getting ready to get out the blind and go down and meet another guy. And three more cows come off the top of the hill and come down and start barking at him. Well, he's got enough energy. He stands up and he barely starts walking up that fence line. And I watch him walk another 150 yards to the top of the hill and cross. There's one cut in the fence, and he crosses right at that cut. And so I meet all my buddies back at the cabin, and we're talking about it, and we decide, just let him stay. And so, it's a sleepless night.
Yeah.
I slept the best I could, but I'm thinking the worst. Second day of a 6 day hunt, and I think I made a good shot, but I can't believe he. I watched him live for an hour after I shot him, and so we go back the next morning, and last place I saw him, it's that blood trail like you talking about. There's a spot here, a spot there. Go 20 yards, there's a spot. But from where we started tracking, we went across a little pasture, and probably 50 yards. And one guy's looking this way in the woods, and I turn around and look, and he's laying there like 10 yards to the right of
Hmm.
me. And you know that feeling when you're thinking the worst, and all of a sudden you see him laying there, and you just you're pretty elated that
Yeah.
that you recovered this animal. So that was pretty exciting. Uh, uh, Something I'll never forget. So
Yeah, that's pretty cool. You watch them, and it's amazing how tough some of these animals are. And you'd have thought it would have been, much quicker than that. And
yes, now
did you?
elk is a tough animal. I've seen guys shoot them, and what we think were decent shots, and they're really tough animals. But for anybody that's never hunted them, they're much tougher than a whitetail for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So did you ever figure out where you hit him?
I hit him kind of back behind lungs, but he was angling pretty steep, and went up through at least one, and some guts, but I hit him pretty good. And I don't think we left him lay all night because we were scared. But I really think within an hour or so of him going over that top, he was probably dead. But I didn't want to take a chance of you know where he went over the top. He didn't have to go much further, and it was going to get rough and really tough to recover. So we in the end we feel like we made the right decision.
Yeah, and if you keep pushing them, they're just going to keep running and running and running. There's no blood, and then there's no blood left, and they're still running. If you
Yeah,
chase them.
you take a 600-700 pound animal that's full of adrenaline, and you push them, and yeah, you've got a good chance you're not going to see him again. So
Yeah. I know I had one deer I shot and wasn't a good shot. They were moving through and I didn't quite get, as far forward as I wanted. And I got down and looked, found the blood, waited, a couple hours for my hunting partner to come over, and then we found started following the blood trail. All of a sudden, a deer gets up and runs off, and they're talking about 3 or 4 inches of snow that night. So we find where's that. Yep, sure enough, that was the deer because there was a big pool of blood where it laid down. I was like, okay, we walked straight out, so we knew where to come back in and start. Come back the next night, and we had 3 or 4 inches of snow, and we're trying to track down a deer that's dead somewhere around there that is covered with snow.
yeah,
So until Randy and his son Randy, they're both out there with me, and I says we're looking for a lump of snow. We're not looking for a deer. We're looking for a lump of snow.
yeah,
And it was snowing. It got down to below freezing, of course. Otherwise, it wouldn't have snow. I don't remember how cold it got, but so we're walking around and walking around. And about 30 yards from where it got up, it laid back down, and I found my lump of snow that had a deer underneath it, and get in there, and the lower legs were froze, but the rest was still warm.
wow. Mm.
And so we got it. It's just one of those things. You make a bad shot, and it had been spooked up by some kids walking around further north, and I
Mm.
just moved my tree stand up further north because where I was at is coming through too late, and I want to move further north So I'd catch them. Well, I wanted to be in my tree stand by 4 o'clock. And I got in there and I was on my tree stand by 4 o'clock. By 4:10, I'd shot the deer. You know,
Yeah.
because there's some people I'd walking around and chase it up earlier than normal. So
Hmm.
I'd have been art where I was at probably, but hey,
Yeah.
I moved and it's coming through and I said, okay, do I follow it or just wait for it? I said, okay, and I shot and I just didn't get the timing down right and got a little too far back, but I got it.
Well, good. Yeah.
Yeah, what's the most challenging hunt you've been on?
Um, I'll tell you a funny story. No, the first year I went elk hunting, we went with a guy we didn't know out in Montana. And I was at the time, now I stay about 265, 270 year round, and I like to hunt at about 240, 245 weight. Well, at that time, I was probably 300. And we were up some high elevation and some steep mountains. And I wasn't prepared. And all week, I was the last one, the slowest one, getting to where I wanted to go, and it was really tough. And it was a tough hunt too. We didn't see a lot of animals, but that taught me a lesson about being prepared. I shot a lot of 3D archery from early 2000s up to 2000. I don't know, 12 probably. Traveled a lot and shot, and always wanted to be prepared. Archery is the one reason archery is such a great sport. It's so disciplined, in your equipment, in your shooting, and so um, when I went on that hunt and I was physically unprepared and had a bad hunt because of that, it made me come home and think about it. And I hate this. I see a guy almost every year in camp that comes to camp to hunt someplace and they're not prepared. Most of the time, their equipment, I've seen some, their equipment's not set up correct. We had a guy this past year who shot an elk and barely hit him, and then shot another one and didn't, same thing, just a bad shot. And he told us in the camp that night, he said, I think this is it for my elk hunting. He was an older gentleman. He said, I really didn't shoot enough all year. And it really breaks my heart when somebody,
Mhm.
some guys plan a whole year to go on a hunt, or maybe 5 years, and they go and they're not prepared. And it really, it's a shame. Um, and so I learned some early lessons about making sure some things we can't control. We can't control the weather. We can't control how the animals act and move, but we can control our part, our equipment and our shooting. So, that's a lesson I learned early on. And I would say to people, be prepared in everything you do, every day of life. Try to be prepared for what you're doing. You know.
Yeah, that's good advice when you get out there and you're struggling just to move around. That's no fun.
It wasn't. I mean, I wasn't embarrassed, but and it was with Kevin, my buddy I mentioned. It was just the two of us. But I'm thinking, I've waited all year to come on this hunt, and I'm here, and I'm not physically ready. And I said I'll never do that again. So I try to, when we draw tags about 6 months before the season comes in, I try to really bear down and on physically and shooting and everything to make sure everything is the best I can be, when I go. And it always doesn't work out, but if you're prepared, that's all you can do.
Yeah, yeah. As long as you're comfortable that you can physically do what needs to be needed, to be done to get out there and you're practicing enough with your bow to, or gun or whatever you're hunting with.
Yeah, you
Um,
say.
if you're practicing with it and you're confident in it, and you could hit with what you're shooting at, and of course, rifles take the least amount of extra effort. and then crossbows and then compounds and then recurves and longbows. Those take the most amount of work. And, I have a recurve that I shoot once in a while, but I'm probably not going to hunt with it because I don't take the time it takes to be good enough to hunt with it.
Mhm.
I'm not comfortable with it. The compound, I don't have to spend quite so much time with it, that I can be confident that I'm going to hit what I'm shooting
Yes.
at.
Hmm.
So uh, I've shot compounds quite a bit more than I have the recurves, but
I mean, I've seen guys come into camp that, everybody gets into camp and you set a target out there and you start, make sure everything's on and every day shoot a
right.
few arrows and we'll stand there at 20 yards and miss 3 or 4 inches and say, well, I know where it's hitting. That's okay. And I'm like, you want to move your sight? Let's get it. No, I'm comfortable with it like that. I'm like, okay, if that's what you're comfortable with. And I don't know if you've ever seen this. I've seen guys with rifles zero in a rifle and at 100 yards may miss 6 inches, and they say, "Well, that's close enough." And I'm like, "It's not close enough.
No,
But you want to be right there in the bullseye, with everything. Because when you're the difference between practicing and hunting is when you're in that moment, you're not in a perfect position, a perfect
no.
angle. Your heart is elevated, uh, and so you want your equipment to be as good as it can be. I will say one other thing about hunting, and I'm a big believer. I don't shoot a lot of 3D now, but I'm a big believer in everybody that hunts should make, if they got a club that's close, should make an effort to shoot 3D because you're working on your bows, you're shooting around other people that's putting a little pressure on you.
Right.
Everybody wants to shoot well. Even with your buddies, you want to shoot well, and you're also practicing looking at animal size lifelike targets, and making good shots. So I'm a big proponent of everybody that hunts should try to shoot some 3D. I think it would help everybody. Anybody that does not should give it a try.
Yeah, I fully agree with that. It's um, you know, going to the 3Ds is going to help you on shot placement as well as judging yardage.
Yes. Yeah.
Because not every 3D course is going to allow you to use a rangefinder. And even if they do, it should only be ranged after you've made your shot and you didn't make a good shot. It's like, okay, how was I off? And then range, oh, okay, I was off by 3 yards, 5 yards, or whatever it is. Uh,
Yes.
learn how to judge yardage, learn how to step off and determine your pace, your
Mm-hmm.
stride length, so that that I can step off a distance to something and I know how far it is. Back in college days, I took a backpacking orientation class, and one of the things they taught us how to do was, okay, you're going to go this amount of distance this direction, then you're going to go over here. So as here's my distance, and if you didn't know how far each stride was, you'd never know how many steps to take. So what we they taught us was you don't count every step. Now me, I count every time my right foot hits the ground.
Mm-hmm.
Military, we all start with our left foot. It's just I I bowl, I start with my left foot. I start walking, I start with my left foot. It's just one of the things. I just always automatically do that. So I will step every time right foot, I count 1, 2, 3. And I know when I get 11 and a half, I'm 20 yards. I've
Mm-hmm.
stepped it off so many times. 11 and a half steps is 20 yards. So if I need to go 40 yards, I'm gonna go 23 steps.
Mm-hmm.
And now I know that is the distance I need to go. So um, that works out pretty nice when when you first starting out, you're in a tree and you're shooting over an open field. How far is 20 yards? How far is 30 yards? Well, until I learned my steps really well, I actually had a 30-foot rope, and I take on the bottom peg, and I had a loop in it. I'd go out, put a marker. That's 10 yards. Okay, go from there. Another 10 yards. There's 20 yards. There's 30 yards. And it's like, what? I'm not shooting past that anyway. So I don't need to know any further than that. Um, and it may be even 40, depending on now. I don't go 40 because I don't see my pins and the targets very well. So I don't shoot the longer ranges. my pins are all disappearing on me. So, but once you get used to the judging yardage, it's a little harder in an open field. And one of the things that I've learned to do is judge yardage. Like, say, one time I was up in a ladder stand on top of a hill. The trail was at the bottom of the hill. And looking at that, the deer come by, they look little bitty little things.
Mm-hmm.
It's 20 yards. And they look like they're probably 50 yards as
Mm-hmm.
far as the size of them. Because looking straight at them, it's 50 yards, but it's not. It's only 20 yards.
Yeah.
And what I do is I'll find a tree that's on that trail and I'll follow it all up to the same height. So I'll judge the yardage of the tree straight out,
Yeah.
not down. And that's how you have to judge your yardage because the arrow is only affect the drop based on the horizontal distance it travels.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're 100 feet up and the trail is only 20 feet out, you got to use your 20-yard pin because it only travels horizontally 20 feet. It might take forever to get there
Yeah. Yeah.
because it has to go so far, but it's only going to drop based on 20 yards.
Correct. Yes.
And that's the thing that it's hard for some to get that concept.
Yeah.
And anybody in construction knows what 3-4-5 triangle is.
Mm-hmm.
Doing what you do, you know what that is.
Yeah.
And for those listening, if you have one leg is 3, the other leg is 4, the distance between the two is 5. So to put that in archery, it's okay. Let's say I'm at the top of the hill, so horizontally from where the ground was is at 30 yards out. I'm up 50 yards or 40 yards, and that distance, if you range it, it's going to say 50 yards. You shoot it for 30, not 50, because of the horizontal distance.
Mm-hmm.
Now, one nice thing about the rangefinders nowadays is they have the angle compensation to figure that angle to figure out what it is. So they'll say, oh, this is a 30-yard shot. And then someone will have a little display. Mostly, this is actually distance is 50, but you're going to shoot it for 30.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
That's what's nice in them. And
it
uh,
is.
the other thing people don't understand sometimes is shoot at 5 feet. I challenge you to shoot at 5 feet and hit your target.
Yeah.
And you're not going to use your 20-yard pin. You're going to be probably 3 or 4 inches low because your eye and the pin is at one level, your arrow is at a different level lower. So you got to think about that. That's when you're blind, you got to think about that because you can shoot through your blind and not
Mm-hmm.
realize it. And I know I created a little video in my basement and I'm 5-7 feet away from it. And below my target is basically a block wall. So I was like, okay, I'm listening. Okay, where's my 70-yard pin? Yeah, okay, I'm good. I'll look, okay, I'm in at the top one, but I'll look at the bottom one. Is like, okay, I'm still in the bag target. So I'm good.
I tell you, you're talking about judging, and I know everybody hunts now for rangefinder, but I'll give you an example. Probably 5 years ago, we was in Montana, and the first day was bad. On the way out there, they was calling for great weather, and I made the mistake. We went out hunting that morning. I did not take a rain suit,
Hmm.
and it was in the low 40s, and it started pouring down rain, wind blowing 20 miles an hour. And by the time I got back to the cabin, everything I had on was soaked as much as if I jumped in a pond.
Oh,
And I was as cold as I've ever been in my life. So,
yeah.
and then the next day, it was lightly raining and so foggy. I always keep two rangefinders in my backpack. Um, and it was so foggy, neither rangefinder would work. At 20 yards, you couldn't range anything, they would not work.
Huh.
And I had a Loophole and I had a Nikon, and neither one worked. And I had sit there for 30 minutes judging the ground on different spots I thought I could shoot, and actually had a nice bull come out and was fortunate enough to make a good shot, but I wasn't able to use my rangefinder because they would not work. And so, you have to be prepared for things happen that you don't think you're going to, that you're not looking to happen.
Yeah. Yeah. But we got a comment in the group. Steven says, I hunt and shoot 3D. It's the best hunting, training, and fun.
That's a fact. That
Yeah,
is a fact.
yeah, it is.
Yeah. I made a lot of friends in 3D, and I don't see them now because we traveled a lot, and archery archery, I won't say more than other sports, but everybody wants to help everybody. And that's
Yeah.
that's one great thing about the sport of archery. Everybody wants to, if you're having trouble, people want to help you, you know. And I've got friends that I've been friends with for 20 some years that we don't hardly ever talk, but we'll message once in a while and keep up, but it's friendships that last a lifetime.
Yeah, I know. I see that a lot too. And I had one guy who was telling a story where he was shooting against one of a fairly top high level shooter,
Mhm.
and uh, he was struggling with something. So this guy come over, helped him, and he's his competition.
Yeah,
It's like, here, come over. It's like, here, it's like, try this, try this. Like, okay, made him better. Because
yeah,
if you're the top shooter, who's going to push you? You need somebody that makes you get better.
that's
And
correct.
that's always, when you shoot better when you're shooting somebody that shoots better than you.
Mhm.
It just drives you to get a little bit better. It's like, what are they doing? And to be focused a little bit more. And, if you're the top shooter, like, yeah, okay, whatever. If nobody's close to you, but somebody gets close to you, it's like it forces you to make yourself better. And, not just in archery, in many sports as
In
well.
everything, yes, sir, in everything. I'll give you an example. We were in Pennsylvania shooting, and in the ASA, I mean, the most fun part was the shoot downs. I mean, if you made the shoot down in the top five in the classes, then on Sunday you would shoot in front of everybody there. Well, the first one I ever made was in Pennsylvania, and I was so excited that I made it. And Rodney was one of the top shooters in the class, and Rodney came over and said, "Look, Jesse, you're gonna want to get you a piece of paper and a pencil." He said, because we're going to go up and they're going to let us judge all five targets. You need to write down your yardage of those five targets. So when we get up at a shoot, you already know, you look down at your paper, and that's something I hadn't even thought about. And I'm shooting against him in his shoot down, and he's telling me something that's going to help me because he knows it was my first one. I really didn't have a clue what I was about to experience, but he was giving me information that was going to help me. And that's what the archery world, that's what it's all about, so um,
Yeah, that seems to be, a common thing amongst, most archers. You're going to run across the one or two that they want to win even if they have to cheat.
yeah,
And I don't think those kinds stay in it very long because nobody wants to shoot with them or be around them because who wants to be around somebody that's cheating? You want to be fair. I don't mind losing, but not to somebody that's cheating.
yeah, yeah.
So you say you used to do 3D shoots, that you're not doing them anymore then, right?
No, sir. I actually I started in the 3D with a recurve and long local stuff, and a guy at one of the clubs said, the ASA is coming to Virginia, why don't you come shoot? And so I went to the first big shoot and I got hooked. And so did a couple more, and we were in Louisiana at the ASA Classic, and I was watching the shoot down of all the pros shooting, and I saw the guys, the limited pros, the guys shooting with their fingers, and I watched them shooting, and they getting these big checks, and I said, I want to be part of that. So I
Yeah.
went home and went to a local shop, a friend of mine, and he said, I'll put you on as a shop shooter. And so I started there and started going to the ASAs and did fairly well and moved up to the what they call the limited pro or the finger pro class and started traveling. And we would travel, we would shoot seven ASAs, four IBOs, and a couple NFAA tournaments. And I did that for 8 or 10 years and enjoyed more success than I probably should have had. But was you know fortunate and like I said, made a lot of great friends and finally, life things change in life uh, and I actually you're talking about you weren't seeing your pins anymore very good. That's one of the reasons I switched back to a recurve. I've always shot 5 pins hunting with a slider, and I got to where when I look at 5 pins, I was looking at a Christmas tree. So I figured, you know what? I love shooting a recurve. I'll shoot something that doesn't have any pins on it.
Yeah.
So that's one of the reasons I. This not the main reason, but that's one reason I went back. I don't see like I used to. So I don't think anybody keeps their vision like they used to.
No, no, it gets a little bit harder, and that's why you just gotta deal with what you have. And one of the problems I had is my left eye is now a clear eye. It used to be the blurrier of the two eyes, and when I shoot with both eyes open, my mind is so trained to ignore the left set of pins because I see two sets of pins. So my mind is trained to ignore the dim set, and the clear ones is what I don't even notice the other set anymore.
Uh-huh.
Well, one time when I didn't notice it, but my right eye was blurry and my left eye was clear, and this deer has come by, and I know that pin was right where it's supposed to be, but instead of hitting it behind the front shoulder, I hit it in the back hip.
Yeah.
Like I was like, we got the deer because I hit the artery in the back hip, but
Yeah.
so when I go down to the range, and I always practice with my left eye closed. So I'm shooting and shooting. It's on, just it's dead on. I got a 5 spot. I'm shooting at the right upper target on it. I open up both eyes and I miss the target to the left.
Wow.
I didn't even hit the paper. I'm like, wow, what's good? So I close my right on, open it up. I'm way off. And it's like, oh, clear eye was blurry eye. Clear blurry eye was clear eye. So my
Oh,
mind automatically focused on the bright set of pins and ignored the other ones. I didn't even notice they were there because I'd shot that way for ever since I was still a teenager. Uh,
yeah.
I've had that little double vision in there, and that's a whole different story. But um, you know, so then I'm up there trying to figure out how I'm going to force my mind to pick up the right eye pins. So I'm doing one of these blinking the left eye to make sure I got the right pins and picking up on there. And I always wear a baseball cap when I hunt. I wear one pretty much all the time. Uh, but uh, had a hooded sweatshirt on, and hooded sweatshirt, your head moves inside. Well, I turned my head to the side, and that hood blocked my left eye. It's like, okay, while I'm hunting, I need a hooded sweatshirt on because that blocks my left eye for me. So I can shoot both eyes open.
Yeah. Hmm. You, I've told 3 or 4 stories of being successful hunting, but I'll tell you one. I have plenty where I was not. A few years ago, I was hunting this really big 9 pointer on our farm, and I was hunting out of a ground blind. And the end of December, I heard something, and I looked up at bottom to my right, and I could see his rack. And so he slowly comes to me. It takes about 20 minutes to get in front of my spot. And so I draw back. And when I bring my pins down and put on him, I look out of my peep and I say, "You're going to hit the blind right there. You're going to hit the top of that window. I mean, the bottom of the window." So I try to scooch up in his seat as much as I could. And I said, "Okay, I think you got it right there." Well, I clip that window and miss him at like 18 yards and shoot under him. And it literally takes me about a week to get over this. I mean, you know,
Yeah.
and I'm like, that is a great, and he had no idea I was there. I could have stood up and shot him and he would not have known in that blind, but so I just want you to know I've had plenty of unsuccessful adventures in my hunting.
Yeah, I've had some of those too. I had one as deer was walking by and I shot and I heard this big old thwack. I was like, man, that was a hard hit. It run off. I wait a little bit. I get down and my arrow's stuck. I got a 1 inch diameter tree I hit. I split that tree. And so I cut it down and got my arrow back. But Man, it's like it. I knew I hit it. But no, it was dead center, a 1 inch diameter tree.
Hmm. Yep, I've had some of those learning experiences.
Yeah, I had one where I was in my tree stand and I'm aiming down at this deer and my lower limb hit the stand. And of course, that just drops him straight down. And the deer was maybe only 10 yards. I missed him by 5 yards. I was underneath by 5 yards, and his 10-yard shot is like, yeah, well, yeah, before I knew any better, I was shooting too long a draw length because my first bow I that I bought, I went into the shop and I was looking for a bow, and this is okay. Um, so she handed me one. I drew it back. He knows what I'm doing. I'm behind my ear here. And I was stretched out. I was like, how's that feel? Okay. I don't know any difference. Like,
Yeah.
okay, 32-inch draw length.
Yeah.
So back in 95, when I went to NFAA had a instruction, how to shoot back tension release. And then also had, get certified as instructor and stuff. So I go down there and first thing to do is measure your draw length. I'm 29 and a half. I got a 32-inch draw length bow. This is on a Friday night. The next class is Saturday night and another Sunday night. It's a 3-night, class. The first night is just to figure out what you got to do. And then next two is action. And this is okay. If you want to come to tomorrow night's class, you have to have your bow down to 29 and a half inches. I got to lose 2.5 inches in my length. So I managed to get it down to the 29 and a half. And I'm so used to shooting 32. It's like, oh, this feels weird. It feels like it feels really short because I'm used to stretching out, like you're going to get shoulder problems. And so finally I shot it for, well, now I shoot 29. And while I was shooting the too long withdrawal length bow, I had this doe come walking out and I shot and I heard it hit my sleeve of my arm. And then, of course, one of those, I sent it back, too far because it caught it. And instead of being where it's supposed to, got in the back and up shattering right through the thigh bone on the back thigh bone. That muzzy just shattered that bone. And of course, got an artist in it, walked, and then where it laid down, I could see it, but I couldn't shoot it because there's a big old tree between me and the deer. And I couldn't get down because it would run off or try to run off. Um, and I couldn't get any angle to shoot it. So I just had to wait, for it to finally bleed out. And, now I shoot 29 and I can wear that same big heavy coat and I don't hit my arm.
Yeah.
I don't have to put an arm guard on. And, once you get a little shorter, you feel it. And it's like, okay, now you get used to it and you like it. And it's that first thing when, when you make a drastic change like that,
Yeah.
but in the long run, it was a whole lot better. I can shoot a whole lot better. I've gotten, um, probably half a dozen or better Robin Hoods, and I quit shooting single spots because it get expensive.
Yeah. Costs too much to do that.
Yeah, especially now if I had to replace my arrows, whether they for your comp pros, your 1,000 straightness arrows, or what a good 150, $200 or something for a dozen.
Yeah.
And I've got plenty. I won't have to ever buy any more arrows because I got plenty of feathers to fletch them because still use feathers
Yeah.
and I got plenty of shafts because when I had my store and I knew I was closing it, all of them that were ones I use, I kept. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, these are no longer in the store. These are mine now.
Good idea.
And
That's
I
a good
kept all
idea.
my 4-inch feathers, the 5-inch feathers. I sold to a group that shoots traditional equipment, and then all the vanes, I end up selling those off somewhere, and I still got
Yeah.
a few of them around. Once in a while, I'll find a strip of them.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. What you said there about your draw length. That's when someone's going to get into archery. What I would tell them is find a good pro shop that
right,
knows what they're doing, because I'm not saying there's many, but there's some that if a guy comes in and they've got a bow that is okay for him, they say, yeah, that's perfect. And find a good pro shop that will get you set up with the right draw length and will set the bow up to be tuned correctly. And you know, I see a lot of people with, like you said, the draw length's too short, too long, the bow's way out of tune, and archery is a lot more fun when your bow is set up correct and you have the correct draw length, you know. So,
Yeah, it is. I know when I had my store, I sold a lot of the PSE Novas. This was about 20 years ago. And that was, a real good low end bow, right in your 300, $350 range. Um, and a lot of places sold them, like I think Walmart sold them and color places sold them. And, but you couldn't compare price against mine. Mine were a little bit more expensive, but mine come with 6 arrows with tips, fletched however you want them fletched, because
mm,
I didn't have any fletched arrows already in the store. They were all fletched to what you wanted.
yeah.
And then also I had, one of the cheap races. It was one of the True Fire, the Patriot one. It was a $20 release at the time. I got them from PSE, but it was a True Fire. It was one of their low end ones. I've had that in there with it. We completely tore it down because it kind of had a little creak in it because I didn't lube the pockets well enough. So when they come in, my guys would tear it apart, lube it, put it back in there. We'd tie on little string silencers, the little skirting material like you use on bass jigs.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we use. We'd cut, like 4 strips about 3 inches long. We'd tie a real tight knot in the middle. We'd pull the inside one and cut them, and then it form a little ball on them.
Mm-hmm.
And so we put that on there. You had everything you need. You didn't have a case. I didn't include a case. My price to order in one of those Plano cases was $5 difference in my wholesale price than what you go buy them at Walmart for.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't stock them. If you wanted one of those, go buy it at Walmart because it's not worth my time and the space, the real tough space to keep that. I had some soft cases, and if you wanted, a better quality one, then we'd order it in. So I didn't do it like now. I've got one of those little Plano cases, and everybody had them. You have to customize them. You look at mine, and there's all kinds of stickers on it. There's one of the other archery stores is around. I've got some paintball gear on it and everything else because in my store I sold, it's bait and tackle store is what it
Mm-hmm.
originally started out as, and then one of the guys added in archery equipment, and then I had muzzleloader equipment in there as well as selling martial arts equipment. So I had all kinds of different stuff in there. So I got all kinds of different stickers on my bow case. So you can't mistake mine for somebody else's because I know I've seen it's like, okay, this isn't my bow case. Someone else got my bow. Where's my bow case?
Yeah.
And it was the exact same one as yours. And they have that little scene on them. And a friend of mine, he painted the scene on it. If you use like the Krylon Fusion, you can
Mm-hmm.
prime it with that because it sticks to plastic very well. And then you can paint on top of it and just customize it, make it your own. And I actually did one of my podcasts is on just customizing your equipment. What can you do? And that's one of the things that everybody's got one of those Plano bow cases. They all look the same. How do you
Yeah.
know yours from theirs? You got to do something different about them. And I just got tons of different stickers on it.
That's pretty cool. Yeah.
So what kind of recurve are you shooting?
Um, I shoot some black widows, but right now I'm hunting with Bob Lee with the Covert Curve limbs. Um, they're not a lot faster, maybe a little bit, and speed is no big deal. I mean, especially in the traditional, because I shoot a fairly heavy arrow and really sharp, really take time to sharpen my broadhead. It's really good. But I shot Bob Lee's probably 25 years ago. It was a guy up in Lynchburg that sold them, and I had a couple, and there's a lot of good recurve bows on the market. I mean,
Oh
they're
yeah.
and it's just a lot of fun, where a compound, you've got to be sitting there shooting dots the size of an inch. You take your recurve, and if you hit pretty close to the middle, you feel pretty good about it, you know. But
Yeah,
yeah, but it is a lot of fun. And where, you know, if I'm in a blind and I get a close shot of the doe with my recurve, I'm just happy as all get out to get it. And you know, I got to where for compound, if it wasn't a buck I was going to mount, you know, or if I needed one to eat a doe, it just got to where it wasn't as much fun as it used to be.
yeah.
Uh, but I still enjoy shooting both. Anything to do with archery is fun. You know, I know some guys against crossbows, and if I ever have to shoot one, I probably will. But if it's legal, I'm all for it. Whatever is legal and in season, if a guy won't shoot a crossbow, then you know. And I know Montana doesn't allow any crossbows, and I'm sure there's a few other states. But uh, I feel like the guys shooting them that don't need to shoot them are missing a little something, maybe a little bit of the fun.
Yeah.
Uh, but if it's legal, I'm all for you using whatever's legal. Yeah.
Well, I know in Nebraska, it used to be crossbow was legal during the firearms season. And then here several years back, they changed it so it's valid during the archery season.
Mhm.
Because it you don't really have that much of an advantage other than the fact that you can cock it and leave it cocked.
Yeah.
But that's where your disadvantage comes in. When you're done, you have to shoot it. So now you got to take another arrow with you, unload it, load it, shoot it into the ground at a target or something. You don't want to shoot it in the ground because that could wreck your bolt because you could hit a rock.
Yeah.
You almost have to carry a bag with you, a small bag to shoot it into. Um, you know, some say you can uncock them. Yeah, you're asking for trouble if you're not really careful, know what you're doing. I just say no, can't unload them. They're just you know, that's a lot of force behind them, and
It
and
is.
and if you take your arrow off and like you pull on the string, if it's one that's long enough where you can do it, you pull on the string and it slips out of your fingers. A crossbow being dry fired does blow up pretty much 100% of the time. You will
Yeah.
blow them up. There are some compounds that will blow up 100% of the time when you dry fire
Hmm.
them. So that's definitely not something you want to do, especially with a crossbow. And it's just safer,
Yeah.
to just unload it by shooting it. Carry a field tip with you, or they actually have some that are designed for unloading your crossbows.
Hmm.
You just shoot them and they're a one-time shot and they just leave because they're biodegradable. So you shoot them and just leave them go. That can get kind of expensive when if you
Yeah.
do it a lot because you don't want to climb in the tree with it cocked or climb down out of the tree with it cocked because if you happen to catch that somehow and cut that string, you just dry fired it
Yeah.
and it's just not safe.
Yeah.
And you know, when I had my store, you could shoot a crossbow if you wanted in the range. It was no big deal. I recommended you bring a target specific for crossbows because you're going to get your bolts buried in the backstop.
Yeah.
So other than that, you know, what I didn't allow is broadheads. I had a big old sign. There's a big old fee if you shot a broadhead into my target.
It doesn't take long to ruin a target.
Oh yeah, it'll tear them out really quick because their design is layered foam, and an arrow will just go through it. And it's going to hit them and mess them up eventually. But a broadhead slices at least three places in there through them. Stick another one next to it. Now you slice big hunks come out of it.
Mhm.
I know I've talked to a few people, a few guys that have shot at the block with their broadhead. You're not going to get near the number of shots, but they didn't care.
Yeah.
No, they just buy another block. But when you're talking about a 4 foot square target,
Yeah.
yeah, you don't want to shoot that. But my thoughts on archery is it a stick with a string flinging another stick? That's archery. So does a
Hmm.
crossbow fit that? Yeah, basically a stick with a string flinging another stick.
Yeah.
That's archery. And that's my definition. And I challenge anybody to prove me wrong,
Yeah.
because that is archery. And it's been around for 64,000 years. So um, we just got to keep it going for another 64,000.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm all for getting more people shooting and hunting. whatever. Like I said, if it's legal, I'm all for it. The more the merrier. I've seen the early crossbows. I've seen a couple guys almost lose a thumb. They
Yes,
and I mean, just like it takes months to get get over it. So
right.
bad. Yeah.
Well, one of the things I tell those interested in crossbows and get ready to get one is anything above that rail will get removed when you pull that trigger.
Mm.
Now they made it so far up that your hand you can't really get unless you really try to. The older ones you could get your hand up there without too much work. Now the grip is down below. You have to put your hand in there, but it's still long enough that unless you're really trying, it's harder to get in there, which is nice.
Yes.
Um, but yeah, that's one of the things I tell them is like if you put anything above that, it will remove it. So if you put your thumb up there and you don't want it, go ahead, pull the trigger. It's going to take your thumb off.
That's good advice.
And if it doesn't, it's going to really hurt. It's like, anything else, with your compounds and recurves and everything else, you got to be careful, check your equipment out. I know I had a riser as a poured riser. I think it was a magnesium riser, an
Mhm.
old one, and from the 70s, I think, mid 70s. And I'm getting ready for hunting season, and I'm down at the range and I'm shooting and check my sight. It's like it's off, so I adjust my sight, and take three more shots. It's off, so I move my sight. I do this like 3 or 4 times, and I finally it's like, okay, I'm going to go up close to the target and see what happens. See where it's at because something's going on. So I draw back and I release the arrow, and I'm holding the bottom half of my bow. The top half comes back and smacks me in the chest. The
Mm.
riser broke. And it's like, darn, I got to find something because I got less than 2 weeks before hunting season starts, you know? And so then that's when I got my first PSE bow. And I had that for quite a while. And I forget which one it was. I eventually did sell it. But, um, that's the one I was using when I went down to the dealer school. That was, I thought it was 32. So that's what I got. And
Yeah.
then when that one broke, I'm saying, okay, I need a 32-inch draw length because that's what I thought I was. And High Country bought out American. There's American, I forget which model it was, not Champion or Challenge or something. I forget now. But they bought them out. So I had to get a High Country come in. They replaced it. And that was the biggest joke. The stickers were just wrinkling all over the place, and they got some new ones in, and finally I had to make one of the shops. I set them up to be a dealer so they could get the limbs in and put them on, and it was yeah. Then when I had my store, I had a High Country in there, and one of the guys, you know, not too far away from me, he was a High Country dealer, and I went down and I was like, okay, here, what do you give me for it? Yeah, I didn't even want to have anything to do with it.
Yeah.
And and he's like, well, it's like, what would you sell it for? Okay. How much profit you need on it? Okay, there's the price. It's like, okay, I don't know what it's worth. I'll never sell it because I couldn't stand behind it,
Mhm.
knowing the trouble I had with High Country.
Yeah.
Now, are they bad bows? Who knows? Um, I just had a bad experience with one, so
Yeah.
I just stayed away from them. And there's so many bow manufacturers out nowadays that there's some new ones like I never heard of that company before.
Yeah.
And you don't have just your Martin, your Bears, your PSEs, your Matthews. Those were all the big ones.
Hmm.
Back then. When Pete Shapley started PSE, and um, what people don't realize, some may or may not know, Pete Shepley has the patent on center shot design risers. He never enforced it. He allowed everybody else to copy it.
Hmm.
And then there was one time Matthews was trying to sue PSE over something that they designed. They said that he copied or something. And that lawsuit kind of just went away because I think Pete just said, okay, you're using center shot design, right? So that's my patent. You have to
Hmm.
redesign your bow. Oh, okay. We won't start.
Yeah.
I just imagine that's kind of what happened because
Yeah.
he has tons and tons of patents on bows. And I was a PSC dealer for a while, so I'm kind
Yeah.
of partial to PSC. I
Yeah.
still,
I understand.
in fact,
Understood.
I still shoot my bow when I had my store. I went down to the dealer school, and part of the dealer school, the cost of it, you got to pick out one of the bows. And just before that, I had bought a Matthews Q2, and it's kind of I got it set up, not really knowing super what was going on with them, but I set it up, and the range had some paper target, the paper to shoot through, and I took my first shot, perfect hole. It's like cool, and I liked the bow. It shot very well. It was a nice shooting bow. So when I go down to the dealer school to pick out my bow, I says, okay, right now I'm shooting a Matthews Q2. Which one of these should I be shooting? It's good, if not better than that one. And I got the PSE Carrera, which was probably about 15 or 20 feet per second faster.
Hmm.
Matthews. This one's rated at 320.
Yeah.
Uh, I didn't care about speed. And then after shooting, it's like this is good shooting bow.
Yeah.
I sold Matthews. I was like, no, no problem. And then a couple years later, they come out with the Scorpion. They come out with it as a two cam bow with a control cable and then a one Y cable and a string. The next year, they made it a single cam, and the next year they dropped it. So there's only two styles of Scorpion. I don't know how many the first one is out, but I had one. And when I make a string, the sticker only listed two numbers. Like, okay, these are definitely not the right ones for this. I need the third number because I didn't know what to make it to.
Yeah.
So I got a hold of them. And they said, "What's the serial number?" So I give them the serial numbers. Oh, okay. Here's your bus cable, your control cable, and your string. These are the links. I'm like, okay, now I know. But
It's
yeah,
amazing how far the manufacturers have come. Uh, every year they I won't say they tapped out. They're getting close, but every year, I think about when I shooting in the early '90s with compounds and versus now, and how far they've progressed. It's pretty amazing.
yeah, yeah. It's amazing. The very first compound was in the late '60s when the first person had designed it, but they weren't really readily available to even buy until the '70s. And just think, 50 years later, what we have from the first compounds like the Bear Whitetail 2, which is,
Yeah.
a bunch of cables and levers that you move and to now, and it's just and the speed difference is amazing how much faster they are. And but with speed comes unforgiving bows.
Hmm.
The faster the bow, the least forgiving it is. So the faster the bow, you better have good form.
Hmm.
Bad form on a slow bow, you can get by with it. Bad form on a fast bow, you ain't getting by with it. And then you have to worry about broadheads, those really fast ones.
Yeah.
And you get your broadheads to fly, the fixed blades. Because now the faster you send them, the more they're affecting the arrow flight. I actually one guy on it did a lot of stuff on that, and he talked about all the different, detailed analysis of arrow flight, and it was kind of interesting. I had to go back and look at that, if you want to know more about that. But that was really interesting, all the characteristics and how the fletching affects the wind envelope around it. And yeah, I don't get into that much detail on it, but I just know this is working good, it's working good.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't try and analyze everything. I do some. I actually took one time when he's still shooting aluminum arrows, and I weighed all the arrows. I fletched them and put the knot, had the knock in them. Of course, you got to fletch them with the knock in. And I didn't have the inserts in or the tips, and I weighed it and I wrote on each one how much it weighed. So I knew exactly how much that shaft weighed. And then I found all my tips because when I store, I buy a bag of 100 grain tips.
Yeah.
Then I could weigh them out. And on a bag of 100 grains, you're going to run it from 95 to 105 as your range you're going to run. that's within, the tolerances of what they're going to run. So I'm going through and I'm weighing them out, so now I'm matching them all up. And then with the insert in there, on some of them to get them to match, I'm filing the back of the aluminum insert down to get the grains. So I got the whole dozen within a half a grain. There's no less than a half a grain between any arrows.
Yeah.
Uh, Very consistent in weight. And so
Mhm.
my thought was, if they weigh exactly the same, they're going to leave the bow at the same speed. At the same speed, they should impact in the same spot, minus my human error and then.
Yeah.
So that should be the most accurate they can be. And they were the double X 78s, which is a 1.5 thousand straightness, which is the best you could get for aluminum. And carbons you get a little bit better, but so I did that, and I'd probably charge double the cost of the arrows, the arrows.
Yeah.
Do that, because it's a whole lot of work. I never did it since. I just did it once,
Yeah.
just because I could.
Yeah.
Now I don't even try and find the heavy part of the arrow. I just grab them, fletch them. I put my wraps on in front of the fletching, so I don't, between the fletching and the tip, right below it. So as I cut my fletching off, I'm not cutting through my wraps. And on the
Mhm.
hunting ones is where I use the wraps. I use a fluorescent uh,
Yeah.
white one, which really glows on those flashlights. Hit them, those LED flashlights. Man, they just glow really good. Easy to find an arrow underneath a tree when you hit them with one of those lights. and and you don't have to worry about the burning out, or the knot coming out from the lighted knocks. I've got some of those. I had one I shot. I didn't see this little bitty branch. My arrow hit that branch. That's the first time I shot that luminoc, and it went flying out. I found my shaft, but no knock in it. It's like, yeah, okay, now there's $10 down the drain. Yeah, at least got the rest of the arrow back.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure you got some stories like that too.
Oh yeah. Well, I tell you one of my first bow hunting stories, and I think everybody gets a kick out of this. I was probably 15, and I had a compound. It had sights on it, but it didn't have a peep. We didn't. I'm 56, so this is 41 years ago. Um, so I and I didn't hunt out of a tree stand. I found a tree that had a fork in it, and I could climb about anything. And I climbed up and got in the fork, and here comes from the pines a decent 8 pointer. Not nothing huge, but for me would have been an exceptional trophy. I'm very young, and so I pull back and I get my pin on a deer and I let go, and the arrow goes wobble, 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 wobble. I hit about a 2 inch pine that was between me and the deer, and
Oh,
just dead centered it. And so I'm sitting there and I'm just fuming. And then a spike comes out and comes under me. I'm sitting in this tree only about 10 yards off the ground. He's under me, and I miss him twice, shooting straight down at him. And I come out that woods that evening, and I'm like, "You're just a total failure. You done sit here and miss 3 shots, all within 20 yards." And it was a learning experience. I would call it again a learning experience.
yeah.
I've had many of those. I'll give you a funny story about a 3D shoot. We were in Florida, and a friend of mine reminded me of this the other day. And so we were shooting in a pro-am where three amateurs, they will put them with one pro, and we'll shoot around together and talk about shooting and tips and anything they want to talk about. And we're shooting for score. And my buddy was shooting with me. And at the time, I didn't know him that well. And so every target, I'm like, "Do y'all smell that?" I was like, something smells really bad. I said, "I can't figure out what it was or what it is." So we shoot to 10 targets and come off the range. And we go to my truck, and I pull one of my arrows out of my 3D stool and get it up towards my nose, and I smell it. I'm like, I said, "This is what you smell. It's the end of my arrows." Well, all winter long, my 3D stool had sit in my storage building, and a mouse had gotten in the bottom of that tube and died. It was
Oh,
cold at home, frozen. So we get to Florida and it warms up. Well, this dead mouse is in the bottom of my tube, and I'm sitting there shooting on the range trying to figure out what smells so bad, and it's my 3D stool. So I had to tell that story for Kevin. He reminded me about it the other day.
yeah, that is quite a story. It's like, what smells? It's like, it's you.
Every time I draw my bow, I would smell it because my arrow is only like 30 inches from my face, the tip of my, and so I finally figured out what it was.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That is, you don't think about it,
No.
because it was froze and then it warms up and it's like, where's this smell coming from?
Yeah.
Yeah, I could just I can just imagine that you go along and so it is smell and try to figure it out and then you finally figure it out.
Finally figure out I'm the cause of it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. If you'd have just took it and upside down and bounced it a couple times, it'd come out.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is pretty good. Yeah, I'm sure some of our listeners have some pretty good stories like that too, because we uh we all have those kind of things come up and we're worrying about something else. And I remember one time I had a release. I've still got the release and another one like it, and not really the best design. And so I'm shooting. We're down at the indoor range. I'm back. We're back at 30 yards, and I draw back, and I always point my. I lean a little bit forward, point my arrow to where I'm shooting, and then draw as I'm standing back up. Otherwise, you end up leaning back.
Mhm.
So I'm drawing about halfway back, and all of a sudden it just takes off. And I'm looking at my release, and the head's off to my release. The release broke.
Whoa.
And of course, doing that, the arm went up, sent the arrow into the ductwork in the ceiling. And I looked down. We eventually found the head of the release down about 30 yards down at the other end of the range. It went flying out that far because I was shooting 70 pounds. And we looked at the design of it, and there's a little knob. It gets thinner before it gets to the head. And that little seam was so thin, there was no support on that aluminum head.
Mhm.
So at a machinist friend of mine, he actually made a replacement for it. And then I had another one that was just always gummed up. They were terrible releases. And now some of our listeners know because I've told this story before, but you'd never guess what the name of the release was.
What?
Fail safe. That was written right on the side of the release. Fail safe. Well, it failed safely this time because the arrow didn't hurt anybody.
Yeah.
So I've never shot it. I've got in my scrap box bit of archery stuff. Uh, I I'll never shoot them again, and I'm not gonna let anybody else shoot them because I know they're crap
Yeah.
releases.
Yeah.
And that's buy a good release. Spend your money. If you're limited on funds, let's say you got 500 you can spend for a bow. Go to a pawn shop, find one that fits you, and buy the cheap run. And now spend 350 bucks. Now take your other 150 bucks and buy a release.
Yeah.
Spend the money on a release, get a good quality release because that is where your shot's going to be. Now
Hmm.
you can deal with, arrows not being so straight because they just don't group as tight, but you're going to have the best groups with a good quality release. And there's several of them out there, that makes good ones. You get the high quality ones, you know, True Ball makes them, True Fire makes some, Scott and Carter might. That's what I use, Scott and Carter's.
Yeah.
And then the Stanislavskis, those are good releases. Don't start with a handheld. You're not going to like the results, especially when it's strictly back tension. Because if
Yeah.
you're drawing back, you don't know what you're doing. You're going to smack yourself in the mouth every
Hmm.
time. And the ones they call them thumb releases because they're incorrectly shooting them with their thumb.
Hmm.
they'll take and use that, they'll put that knob on kind of on the tip of the thumb and then pull it with their thumb.
Yeah.
Your thumb has less dexterity than your index finger.
Hmm.
You're causing more problems by trying to use your thumb. Now they're called a thumb release because now on mine, I don't have that knurled knob on. I took it off because I don't need it because I put the trigger right in the seam between where my index finger and my thumb meets. There's a little pad right in there, and it puts right in there. My hand is relaxed. I got the thing on there, and on mine, I can actually put pressure on the release itself with my thumb
Yeah.
as I draw back. But you got to remember, when I'm drawing back, my thumb is completely off of it. And then once I get there, I put my thumb on it. And my Carter has the hardest springs they make for them. I
Yeah.
put the hardest ones in there because I don't want a higher trigger because I
Hmm.
want to be able to put some pressure on it. My son has one that has a little bit lighter trigger on it. I can't shoot it. As soon as I put it in there, it's like it goes off. I don't get a chance to get in my position. And so when he shoots it just fine, but I like the heavier trigger.
Yeah.
Yeah. Same thing with your wrist straps. I always tell people when I find out an archer uses a wrist strap release, I says, I'll give you your first lesson free. Quit pulling the trigger. They look at me like, huh? I didn't know I'm pulling the trigger. You are, aren't you? Yeah. Well, I've done this long enough. I know you're pulling the trigger. Quit doing
Yeah.
it. You want to shoot better? Quit doing it. And then I'll go and explain to them and what are the things one of my tests to see if they're even coachable is I say, okay, now this is why you don't want to pull the trigger because while you're aiming is a fine motor skill, pulling the trigger is another fine motor skill. Humans cannot do two at the same time. You do one or the other, not both. It's like,
Hmm.
okay, pick a spot off at a distance. Concentrate. Don't think about nothing else. And now with your finger out, try and move your finger without thinking about your finger. And it's like, I can't do it. I can teach you. It's like, oh, I can do it. I'm lessons over. I'm done. I can't teach you. And then I'll say, well, switch the other hand. Like, no, I can do it. No, I'm not going to talk to you anymore about shooting better because you're
Yeah.
just stuck in this rut of, you're not open to be coachable and
Yeah.
wasting my time and your time. And a lot of times I can talk to somebody for a few minutes. I know if I'm even going to introduce them to any new concepts. After a while, you get learn who is open to be taught and who's not. And those,
Yeah.
if you're not, you're never going to get any better than what you are now.
Hmm.
And when I first started my the archery group, the Archery Talk 101 Facebook group, and uh, I'd be in some of the other groups, and they'd say, "Well, how's my form?" Or "What can I do to get better?" And the answers are, "Shoot more. You're shooting wrong. Shoot more. You're just going to shoot wrong more." And then I said, "How's my form?" And then I was like, and then there's so many wrong answers. Most of it's like, "Well, just practice more." So then I say, "Hey, come in the Archery Talk 101 Facebook group. Come in there, upload your video. We'll take a look at it. We'll give you some pointers."
Yeah.
And so that's what nice about is that group is there's a lot of people in there that are open to learning and open to giving knowledge and there's a lot of information. If you're having a problem with something, hey, let them know.
Yeah.
You,
Yeah.
you know, I've been an archery coach since '95. I haven't gone out and did all these fancy tests, all these mega levels and stuff like that. But I've taught hundreds of people how to shoot and taken them from. I had one guy come in when I was working at Bass Pro, 20 yards. He was grouping probably about a 6 or 8 inch group. 45 minutes later, he's shooting 1 inch groups.
Wow.
Of course, his draw length was way too long, so we had to
Hmm.
shorten that. And then proper shooting technique, and then you know 45 minutes later, 1 inch groups.
Yeah. If people will set up right and learn how to shoot correctly, like you're saying, they'll enjoy the sport so much more. We're pretty fortunate here where I am. I'm only 45 minutes from True Ball, and so I love their releases, their sites. I mean, they're a great company, and I actually, if I'm shooting a compound hunting, I I shoot better with a back tension then it just goes off so easy for me, you know.
Right.
But I've done it for a long time, and like you, I wouldn't suggest anybody grab one and just start shooting one because they'll end up with a lip with a little bit of blood trickling down before they know it, you know. Uh, so, but yeah, we're pretty fortunate here as far as the releases go.
Yeah.
Uh,
I actually had the guys from True Ball on, the CEO from True Ball on, and talked about it, True Ball releases, and
yeah.
it's pretty cool. It's got some pretty good stuff in there. And um, I know a buddy of mine I hunted with all the time. He shot fingers for years and years and years, and he got a new bow, and he wanted to go to a release. So I said, Mike, make sure your fingers behind the trigger because you're gonna pull the trigger, smack yourself in the mouth. And it's like boom, the release, it let go on me. That's you pulled the trigger, didn't you? He says, no, I didn't. And in front of us, yeah, he did. He pulled the trigger. It's like that's the only way you're going to do it. It's like, Mike, put your finger behind the trigger when you draw, because what happens is you're drawing, and if your finger's in front of it, you start a little bit of pressure, and you end up making a fist and pulling through. And what are you doing? You're pulling back towards your mouth because you're not pulling off to the side because
Yeah.
that's hard to do. You're pulling right back to your anchor point, which is your mouth, and that's why I always teach. The trigger is on the second joint, not on the tip like a firearm. We shoot guns off the tip of our finger.
Yeah.
And then you come back to the second joint. That still won't help you much. You come back to the first joint. You come back to the second joint, which is the furthest one before you actually get to your palm of your hand. And that's where you want your trigger, because that also keeps you from doing one of these things of pulling the trigger because it's not on the tip of your finger. You don't have the tendency to do it. And then by putting pressure on it, you can break it over by just using your back tension release.
Yeah.
And I've had some say, well, you got to shoot them differently. No, you don't. I put my finger on there and I pull through. With the handheld, I put my thumb here and pull through. The difference is I have a kisser button, which goes the corner of my mouth, plus my nose and a peep. Those three are lined up. I don't care what my hand does. It can go anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Now, with the release strap, I put the first knuckle, right back in that pressure point behind the ear. Now, I can't do that when I do the other one because I roll around. So it's basically the ring finger ends up in that same spot because the release doesn't change. Now, you do
Yeah.
twist the string in it, but those jaws on those are so smooth when they open, you don't have to worry about it. Um, that the one I have, the handheld, the Carter Chocolate Addiction, actually will lock around the loop. So now I can let it hang on my bow.
Mm-hmm.
And now I can find my release. I can find the arrow. I know to put the arrow between my middle and ring finger, slide down. I find a release. I know where it's at. I don't have to look at it. I know where it's at. Now my wrist strap has a little hook on it. It's a Scott. I forget what it is. It's probably 25 years old. Um, but it has a hook on it. So I can find the string, go down and find the loop, and I can hook it in. So I can do that, hook either one of them without looking. Now, if I have the jaws that opened up and closed, you almost have to look for them
Mm-hmm.
because you can't just hook them up.
Yeah.
That's why I don't really care for those too well. Um, because I have to glance down. And when I glance down, every time I've glanced down, I look back up and the deer's looking at me. Every time I glance away for some reason, I look back and the deer's looking at me. So I just don't look away. I just keep concentrating on where I want it to go.
Yeah. You know, one thing you said is so true. You said that if you're making bad shot, if you're shooting bad and you just keep shooting, you're just shooting a lot of bad shots. And so when I used to shoot a lot, like I used to spend several hours a day either shooting or judging yardage. And if I went out and a shot was breaking good and I was shooting good, I may shoot 2 hours. But if I go out and something's off in my shooting, I'd set the bow down. I'd go judge targets that day. Just spend my time judging and maybe come back tomorrow because reinforcing something that's not going right doesn't help you. Just
Right.
like you, yeah, it's not positive at all. So that was
No,
a
I,
good point.
I've done the same thing. There was one time um, I wanted to go down to the range and shoot because I had the key so it could shoot. It was open 24/7 because I had the key to get in anytime I wanted. And uh, that was eventually being in that club. You can go down at 1 o'clock in the morning. And it's weird, it's 10 o'clock at night. There's more people there than there was at 5 or 6. Because I'd go down after, dinner and everything, get the kids to bed. I'd go down and shoot. And this one time I went down there, I really want to go down and shoot. So I drive down there, go inside, I shoot 5 arrows. I'm like, no, I'm done. And then I started to talk to people that was there and went home. I shot five
Yeah.
arrows because I got there and something wasn't right.
Yeah.
So I just quit.
Yeah. I tell you another thing. In shooting that time I told you about, I shot the top of the blind, the bottom of the blind when that big 9 pointer came out.
Yeah.
When I just set that blind up that day, and when I first got in the blind, I had a horizontal window right there, and really the best shot I had, and the blind had some vertical windows in it. And I told myself, why don't you take 10 minutes, rearrange your blind? And I said, no, it's going to be okay. Well, my mind was telling me, you don't have a good setup, but instead of changing it, I didn't. Well, and shooting's the same way. If you draw back and something doesn't feel right, just like say if you're shooting targets and you say, well, I'm just going to shoot anyway. Most time you're going to miss because your mind knows that something's off. You know,
Right.
our mind's a lot stronger well, mine's not, but most people's are a lot than what we give credit. I mean, it knows when the slightest little thing is off, and we don't listen to it most time.
Yeah, that is true. We don't listen to it as much as we should because if your instincts are telling you one thing, and you do something different, you probably um, should be listening to it.
Yeah, most time doesn't end up well.
No, no, it sure doesn't. That's for sure. It doesn't end up too well sometimes.
I have one question for you. Uh,
Sure.
has Where are you at? Has the past year or two been tough on a deer as far as uh, any? I know a lot of places out west, the mule deer are down and some of the whitetail, and I didn't know where you were if y'all had experienced that.
The mule deer I don't know too much about because that's more out in west and we don't have any around here. I'm on the east end of Nebraska, just all whitetail. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
Probably have to go 100 miles probably to get where there's any decent amount of muleys. But
Yeah,
um, yeah, it's I don't know. I haven't really heard too much about it. I know the couple of properties I have, they're mostly moving at night. It's just they're corridor ones, so I'm working on um,
yeah,
figuring out how to get them there during the daylight hours, and so we can get them. They do come during the daylight sometimes, but mostly at night. And I did get a pretty cool video on one. I got like 3 videos on the trail camera of 2 little small bucks. There's a little spike buck that runs around and 2 kind of medium bucks. Um, you know, if you're hunting for bucks, they're not really one you're going to shoot. And then there's one
mm-hmm.
that's a nice one that you would shoot. And these 2 bucks, I see them walking around. They walked around in one of them, and then I had another shot. They come back, and they're kind of sticking their noses together and kind of somewhat playing around. And hear a couple of videos, and then they kind of walk off together. And I was like, oh, that was cool. So I actually posted that video in the group as well as on my YouTube channel. But it was kind of interesting. You catch it. Now it was about midnight.
Yeah,
They all come through there between like 11 and 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. Last year, I was able to get them coming through in one area, but the area that's coming through before is kind of all grown over with grasses now. So I don't think they're using that part anymore.
yeah.
They were coming through about a half hour before shooting time. Like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, well. So I was like, okay, rifle season, I'm going to set up so I can watch that spot they're coming through, and hopefully they'll come through and mill around in the field. And uh,
Yeah.
yeah, nothing come through. Yeah, I had this year I sat up over the cornfield looking at my ladder stand, and just on the side, probably 10 feet or 10 yards from my ladder stand, and the other property we can't hunt because we don't have permission over there. this doe comes running through. If I'd have had a shooting lane over there, we didn't get cut a shooting lane because we can't shoot over there anyway. And
Yeah.
it stood there for a while, and I got my camera out, so I started my camera up, and then it run off. Next thing I hear, two more does come running through the field, running off, and it's like, oh man, I was hoping she'd go on my side of the field. But it would have been, that would have been a shot out of the tree stand or the archery stand
Yeah.
because it was, I think that's what 25, probably a 25, 20-yard shot is all. And clear to the corner is only like I think a 30-yard shot because we set up, we ranged it just so we'd know.
Yeah.
And it just so happened that, I I went out during firearm season and then they come by out of close to my archery stand.
Yeah. I tell you, listeners, I will shoot one at 20 with my recurve, but I really like 10 to 15.
Yeah,
Well, I really like it. Yeah. So the closer the better.
yeah. I know my first deer was 40 yards. I was 20 feet up in a tree, with a not a very heavy bow, but a real heavy arrow, and it
Mhm.
almost went clean through it. And then I've shot a couple at 20 yards. I try to set it for 20-yard shots, but they don't ever agree. They always come in closer. I've had them. I've had them at, well, walk underneath my tree stand. I shoot a lot of them at 10 to 15 yards. Um, most of them are that range.
Yeah.
It's, I prefer the 20-yard shot because it's a little less of a steep angle,
Hmm.
and they're far enough away that they don't detect you quite as much. But uh, sometimes you get closer shots than what you want.
Yeah. Yeah.
I had one. I think I've told this a while back, but I had one deer coming in from my right and behind me, and it come up on top of the down the trail, and I shot at it. Those keyword shot at it. I missed. I smacked the tree. I heard it hit a tree. That deer run forward, turned to the left, back around, closer to me, and looked to where that noise was. I was able to load another arrow and shoot it at a closer range. Out of that same one, I had one come down. I think it might have been the same deer. When I shot that one, I know I shot one out of there, and I heard another one coming from my left and in front of me. So then I loaded another arrow, and I shot that day. I shot two deer within probably 5 minutes at most between each one
Hmm.
because I no more than shot the one, and I loaded an arrow, and then here comes the other one. I draw back and then shoot that one, and just enough to watch the first one run and get ready for the second one, and so then we had two deer to clean that night and haul out.
That's a lot of work.
Yeah.
Work
Fortunately, they were
stall.
does, not great big bucks.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was an interesting night when I was able to get two of them. Then I had another time when I think I had three arrows with me. I like to carry six arrows with me, and
Hmm.
I shot. I don't know what I did. I ended up missing. I think I had two or three arrows with me because I just didn't take time to set them up. And I'm out of arrows, and the deer keep walking by. Another deer, another deer, another deer. I think about six of them come walking by after I was out of arrows.
Mm.
I'm like, I didn't have any arrows. I couldn't go down and get any because one, they were dull now because they were in the ground. So yeah, that was the one and only time I went out without a full quiver of broadheads.
That's the one time you really needed them. That's the way it works.
Yeah. Yeah, the one time I needed them, I didn't have them, and normally like at one's all I need. Uh,
Yeah.
but I got five more in the quiver. Yeah, I take my quiver off when I hunt, so I don't practice with it on.
Hmm.
I've got a little screw-in thing that has an extra receiver. I use the PSE quivers. I got an extra receiver, so I can just flip the lever, pull my quiver out, stick it on the one in the tree, latch it down, and now my arrows are fastened right to my tree. They're out of the way. I need one. I can go back and grab them, get another arrow, and then load another arrow if I need to. That way I don't have the weight. Because if you have your quiver on when you're hunting, but don't have it on when you're practicing, arrows shoot differently.
Hmm.
So however you're going to hunt is how you want to practice. I don't practice the quiver on, so I don't hunt with it on. Now, if I do come across something I'm walking in or out, I got my quiver on. But lots of times walking in, I've got a little sling that holds it by the cams. So I'm walking in, I'm not even carrying my bow. So if I'm walking in, my release is probably in my pocket and my bow is on my sling. So I'm not going to get a shot off very quick anyway.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, if I know there's a spot where they could be hiding on the way in or bedding down, then I'll be stalking in. So then I'll have an arrow knocked and release on there and everything else. But lots of times I don't do that because we're going in at a time when you can't shoot anyway.
Mhm.
I had one time I was walking in and I use a little bit of mini mag, so I don't have a little bright light. It's just small light. And I heard a deer get up and run off a little bit. So I covered up the flashlight, turned it off. There's enough of a moon I could see to walk into my tree stand. So I got in my tree stand, climbed up. I'm sitting in there. Now, probably it's not even time yet. It's probably still half hour before shooting time. Just like to go in about an hour before. And sure enough, that deer come walking past my tree stand before shooting time. It didn't go very far. It just went just a little bit, heard some noise, and I stopped and turned it off, and then I just kind of slowly walked in and got to my tree stand because I wasn't that far into it. And next thing, oh, here comes a walking. I was like, I can't see to shoot you. I, I can't tell if it's a doe or a buck or how big it is. I couldn't see my pins anyway. So nice thing I like the fiber optic pins is when they started glowing, it's normally shooting time. When they stop
Yeah.
glowing, it's time to quit shooting.
Yeah.
Um, unless you're early season and you got that big canopy, then or you have snow on the ground and you have full moon and no
Hmm.
tree, no leaves, then they never stop glowing.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
had that once. It's like, okay, it's got to be getting close, and I'm looking at my pins. My pins are just bright as can be, and I'm looking at my pins like it just seems like it's past shooting time. Get on my watch. I'm an hour past shooting time. I can see my pins clear as day. I can see everything in the forest clear as day. I walked out without a flashlight. Full moon, snow covered, no trees. I'm like you just you never know, so you can't depend on that. And that's just one of those things that I didn't realize that, full moon, no leaves and snow on the ground, your fiber optic pins are going to glow all night long.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll tell you a funny story. Was up in Canada one year, and the first hunt, uh, the guy told me where to go down this road. Said you'll get to the end, the fork, and your blind's right there to the right. So I get out there and I see the blind. I climb up in it, and it's a plywood box. Well, I'm a bigger than normal person, and so I get in this box, and it's a 4x4 box, and I can't even draw my bow inside of the box. I mean, like I can't stick my arrow out to one and draw the bow. It doesn't fit. So I get out of the box, and there's a big rock beside me. So I cut some limbs and I make me a little makeshift blind and sit there. And right before dog bear comes out, and the bears are really smart. He would run out, smack your barrel over, and run back in. Then he would run out, stick his head up in there and grab a donut, run back in. So I didn't have any luck that night. And it was 2 or 3 nights later, I was sitting in the same spot and was finally able to get me a bear there. But you know, having to make my own blind sitting right there was kind of a treat, I guess,
Yeah.
because you probably could have shot a rifle or a crossbow in it, but you could not draw a compound inside of it. So that was a little bit of an experience.
Yeah. I know I went down to Texas hog hunting one time with a friend of mine, and I told him I wanted to bow hunt. He was down rifle hunting. I wanted to bow hunt for him. And they didn't get the concept of archery. You can't shoot out of a rifle blind.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm standing in the doorway waiting for him, so I can shoot him from the doorway. And down there they put grain and stuff out to bring him in,
Mhm.
and didn't see anything. Now the last day, guys with it, so we're gonna see if we can get something. So I used his rifle the last day, and sure enough, um, one comes out. I think it was a javelina comes out, and so I take and he's videoing on my VCR camera, and I shoot. I think I missed or something on that one. So I did end up getting a couple of them later, but so we're playing a video back, and at that time I had a VCR player that you'll frame advance. A lot of them
Mhm.
you just hit play and stop, play and stop. This one had dial I could frame advance. So I want to see where the bullet hit, because it's like I don't know where it hit. So I'm going thump, thump, and one frame I caught the bullet in mid-flight on a VCR camera.
Wow.
Like that was cool. And then next
Yeah.
frame I could see where it hit the ground. It's like that was cool. I caught the bullet on a VCR camera on one frame.
That's pretty amazing.
Yeah. Now where that tape is, no clue. Yeah, that was interesting. And javelinas, they say, oh, that don't taste good. Well, it tastes like pork to me. I thought they were good.
we were uh we were quail hunting in Texas one time, and most time it's eight of us would go. Four we called the young guys, and now we're the old guys.
Yeah,
Uh, but probably one of the funniest things that happened to me. I was crossing a barbed wire fence, and somehow or another, crossing it, I tripped. And I don't know if you've ever watched any wrestlers where they tie the wrestlers up in their ropes, their arms. Well, when
yeah,
I tripped, my legs got hung up in a barbed wire fence, and I'm laying on my back. And if I'd been by myself, I don't know how I would have ever gotten up.
yeah,
But my buddies come over there just howling, laughing. I'm laying on the ground, stuck in the fence, my gun sticking up in the air, and we. I tell people now, I still love to hunt, and I hunt as much as I can, but hunting is more about the experience with the people you with than it is about the actual hunt. It is for me now, you know, the going, the traveling, the back and forth, the nighttime joking and cooking and eating. That's the experience, and
yeah,
I feel sorry. I see a lot of Facebook stuff where people just talking about how big or whatever they're killing, or they're sorry, or they, I've killed one I shouldn't have. None of that matters. It's your experience you have, and while you're doing it with the
right,
people, and enjoy every minute of it. I tell when I have a buddy hunting, I say, look, enjoy. You never know what may be your last hunt. We never know,
right.
and enjoy it all. So if I could say anything to people, I would say enjoy your life, because you never know when you do something, maybe the last time you ever do it.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah. Just have fun and enjoy enjoy your time.
yeah, I mean, shoot a doe. If you want to shoot a little buck, shoot a little buck. You know, have a good time.
Yeah. But I told my daughter when taking out first time took her out for rifle, because I don't know if she can even now today pull back a compound enough to shoot a deer with it. But I told her, it's like, okay, the first deer, go ahead and shoot it. If it's a fawn, shoot it. Now, after you shoot your first deer, now let's talk about letting the fawns walk and shooting the does.
Yeah,
And sure enough, a doe and a fawn come in, and she shot the doe, not the fawn, and then went out the next time, and she only wanted to shoot a buck next, and of course didn't get one. And, there was one come walking by, but she said she didn't have a clear enough shot at the vitals to shoot it, and so she passed up on it. And
yeah,
so that was good that she
yeah,
did that. But it's kind of interesting, when you go out hunting with your kids, that's really enjoyable when you can do that. And I was telling my son about one of the stories when he was out when he was with me, and he didn't remember it. I did. Because one of those miserable days when it's supposed to quit raining, we went out and it's supposed to quit raining, by 7. It didn't quit at 7. It's supposed to quit by 8. Didn't quit. Supposed to quit by 9. Still didn't quit. And we said, you know what? We ain't waiting no more. We're out of here. And so we started walking out. We're coming down this trail down the side of the hill, and we stopped. And here's this doe about 20 yards standing broadside to us. And so I told my son, I said, Chris, get ready, behind me because they're looking at me. They're not paying attention to behind me. So get ready. And then when you're ready, just kind of sneak out to the side a little bit and, so you're up next to me here and then go ahead and shoot. It didn't wait that long, but it ran off. But, it was raining.
Yeah,
Not a hard rain, but it just one of those, miserable to be out in rains. But that
that's a
was kind of fun
good,
to
good
do.
experience you always remember.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember he didn't until I told him again. It was nothing to him. It was kind of exciting for me. And then I wasn't able to follow him on his first restock inning. This deer was coming down, so he real quietly got up close enough to where he could take a shot. Where he made his mistake, he didn't realize it that you needed to come to draw before it steps out behind the evergreen tree, so you're at full draw when it comes out. He waited for it to come out, and then he couldn't draw on it, and then wasn't able to get it. But he learned,
Yeah.
come to draw before it gets into the opening. Yeah, we learn lots of
Yes,
fun
I've
stuff.
had a lot of learning experiences, some tough ones,
Yeah, yeah.
really tough.
You make a shot that you think you can make that should be a good shot, and it ends up being a bad shot, and like, okay, run off with your arrow, and not even a more scratch on it. Well, it's what is it? Almost 7 o'clock now. So
Yeah,
yeah, I've been on here a little bit of time here. So yeah, it's been really great talking with you. Um, I know you've got a lot of cool stories you told and all the interesting ones, and I hope our listeners have learned something, from our conversations, and we just like to uh, pass on our knowledge. I know I like to pass on my knowledge, and you do too. And it's always a lot of fun when you take a new archer and the light just kind of comes on and they start enjoying it. And like I've had one time I had this guy come in and his wife was there, and I said, "You want to shoot?" And she says, "No." So just take one shot. It's like, "Oh, okay." One shot, and she was hooked.
yeah, yeah,
It's like, oh, this is fun. And there's a lot of things that you've done. It's like, nah, I don't do this. You do it, then you get hooked on it.
yeah,
So just start out.
yeah. Just start. And the first time I went to archery range and shot, I knew it was something I wanted to do. It's a lot of fun. Uh,
Yeah, it is. Lot of fun. Well, in your parting thoughts, what do you have? And do you like to tell the a new archer uh, that's just looking to get started? What would you tell them?
like I said, uh, go to a shop or wherever you can to get a bow that's fit for you and that is set up right. And I would say anything you want is achievable as long as you put the time in.
Yep.
I'm going to tell you one more quick story, and it ties into that. We were at IBO, and this young man came up with his mother and was going to shoot in the professional class, and you could tell right away that he was not the best shot, but he had desire. And after the round, I think he finished probably the last. And I know he did. He finished last in the class. And some of the guys you were talking about were joking about him. Said, "I can't believe he's here shooting." And I traveled with the Goza brothers for years. Three brothers, Joseph, Larry, and Brian, were great shooters. Joseph, I I know has won the Buckmasters more than anybody else. I think he's won it 6 times, I believe. But I said, y'all, that guy has more desire to shoot than anybody I've ever met. If he sticks with it, he will be something. Well, about 5 years later, he won an ASA event in the Open Pro class. Uh, Joby Shaw was his name, and Joby doesn't shoot now. I hope he'll come back and shoot one day because he has a world of talent. But when he started, he was, I don't want to say bad, but he was not good. But he had the desire and he became a great shooter. And so I would say to anybody who wants to get into it, get set up right and, just start in as small steps, like you said. Just start and keep advancing and find someone like your podcast, find somewhere where you can learn about shooting and all the other aspects of it, and nothing's impossible.
Yeah. Well, if he wasn't in the tournament, somebody else would have been last place.
Yes.
And
Exactly.
if there's three people in there, third place is last.
Last.
They're the
That's right.
last. They're the worst in the group.
That's right.
So
Also say, don't worry so much about what other people think. People spend their lives worrying about what everybody thinks. You know, enjoy it and have a good time. And that's what all I can say. Yeah.
are you shooting better today than you was yesterday? If the answer is yes, you're improving.
Yes.
You're better than you was yesterday. Yesterday you was last place. Today you is first place.
Yeah.
Just make today's your last place, so tomorrow will be your first place again.
Hmm.
Keep improving,
Yeah.
and ask for help. That's the thing is, if you're struggling with something, ask somebody. Don't go up and tap them on the shoulder while they're actively shooting, but um, go talk to them. On my 3D rig, I have my NFA instructor patch on there. Figuring if somebody's interested, they see the instructor patch, come ask me. That's what I always figured. It's like that's why I put it on there because I'm not going to go up and say I can make you a better shot.
Yeah.
That's just not. But if you're struggling with something, I might talk to you a little bit, and it's like, hey, if you would like some suggestions, here's a suggestion, you might try this, and then walk away. And then if it's like, oh, I don't quite understand it. Can you explain that a little bit better?
Hmm.
And then now we're going on and improving and getting better at stuff. So, yeah, it's just ask.
Yeah.
That's what you got to do. Just ask.
Absolutely. I was fortunate to shoot with some of the best shooters out there, and those guys, if someone would stop and ask them a question, they'd be more than happy to help. You
Right.
know, and 95% of people in archery, they will. You've got a few, like you said, that don't really care, but most of the guys and girls want to help anybody any way they can. And like you said, just ask. Um,
Yeah. That's all you got to do. And that's that is one of the reasons why I have the podcast as well as the group is to help new archers out. Learn what to do. Now, if you're struggling, um, then there's somebody in here to ask, and there's probably somebody in this group, the Arch Talk 101 Facebook group, that has had the same problem and solved the same problem you're having.
yeah, for sure. Yes.
Because we
Yeah.
got archers that have been shooting for decades,
Hmm.
and we have archers that have been shooting for days. And everything in between, and all kinds of levels, between, the beginner, the one that only shoots target shoots, one that shoots 3Ds, those that only hunt. We have, semi-pro, professional, Olympic archers. We have all that in the group. So what level are you looking to go to? There's most likely going to be somebody here that is there that can help you go get there.
Hmm. Well, I can tell you this: I really appreciate what you're doing. I mean, this is wonderful what you do and what you have here, and really appreciate you asking me to be on. Really, really do.
Yeah, we're coming up on I think this is episode 155. And here in another couple of weeks we'll be starting season 3. So
That's
I started a little bit later in season 1, and then I start new season every January, and this will be the third season, and It's been going along, that's, well, pretty soon here, this next year, I've done it for 3 years, this
Yeah.
podcast, like to all kinds of people. And, and, um, if you know anybody that's interested in being on the podcast, the only requirement to be on the podcast is we start talking about archery.
Well, I will steer some your way.
That's it, and and if you have the link to book a time, you know, pass it out, and if you want to get on, let me know. You know, just because you're just starting out doesn't mean you don't have something to say. Those are kind of things that, if we can help you out starting out, or you have some interesting stories to tell, why you're starting out. And especially, if your whole family's shooting,
Yeah.
that is something when you can get the whole family to shoot. That's
Mhm.
really nice.
Mm.
Well, my name is Roy Canterbury, and I've been your host today on our Chuck 101 with Jesse Lane, and we will see you on the next one. Bye, everybody.
Thank you, sir.